Well, it's the spookiest time of year, and I want to talk about one of the best Halloween films ever, and one of the highly underappreciated Halloween games. Like, I don't even know if this counts as a Halloween film and game because I watch it all year round, and I think it's actually a fantastic film. One of them fantastically terrible films. I am, of course, talking about 2004's absolute epic film, Van Helsing, starring one Hubert Jackman. Doing any sort of research on this game, the game developers tried to claim that this was a action horror game, but in reality, it's just a Devil May Cry clone, and unashamedly a Devil May Cry clone. Like, it is borderline copyright issues, but it's really good. Think of this game as like a kid-friendly Devil May Cry game, and it is honestly so good. Massively underrated. I highly recommend anyone that was a fan of the film to play this game, because there's bound to be fans of this film. To me, this film always reminds me of like The Mummy and The Mummy Returns with Brendan Fraser, probably because it has the same writer and same director. And if I'm being honest, I found out when doing research for this that there was actually supposed to be an extended universe. They are supposed to be all part of the same universe, which is madness to think that we almost got a film in the early 2000s that starred Brendan Fraser and like all of the other characters in one big film, like a massive Avengers mashup, like 10 years before the Avengers was even a thing, but of classic horror films, which is probably why Universal keep trying to get a dark universe or whatever it's called going, but it's just failed so badly. Now, this game was released in 2004, shortly after when the film came out, and has a lot of the starring cast reprise their roles in the game. Obviously, Hugh Jackman, or one Hubert Jackman, reprises his role as Van Helsing, and so does Stephen Summers and Richard Roxburgh, all reprise the same roles. And when you look at this game, the graphics are actually pretty good. They've got the likeness down, I'd say acceptable for 2004. I think that looks alright for a 2004 game. But the gameplay is surprisingly good. Like, I was looking at the reviews of this and it got absolutely panned when it first came out, probably for just being a movie tie-in game. But honestly, going back and playing this game now, I'm like, this is pretty good. Like, this is far better than the other crap that you got, what was a movie tie-in crap, especially for a film that was also so crap by like the standards of the time. It is, of course, a beloved classic, especially by me and a lot of my friends. But the game was developed by a studio called Sapphire and then published by Viventa Universal Games, which is a subsidiary of Universal. They sort of do any games that we like, Universal properties, movie properties, so, you know, like the in-house publisher. And as I previously mentioned, when this game came out, it got absolutely shafted by reviewers. Like, we're talking like mid-range at best. I think the highest scores I could see were like 6 out of 10, and the Game Boy Advance version got a miserable 33 out of 100 on Metacritic. So it wasn't that good, but in hindsight, going back to it, it really is fun. It's really fluid, and I love all of the voice roles and how they've sort of like brought the like scenes from the film into the game. So obviously this is like the opening of the film where he fights Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde or whatever, which one it is, and like Van Helsing's so quick, it's like so responsive, so good to move. There's a little bit of issue with a lock-on system, but I'll forgive it. But overall, it feels fantastic. This opening level of the game really is good for just making you feel like Van Helsing. You get access to pretty much all of his moves, you get loads of gadgets that he has, and it's just fun. Like, there's also what I began to notice as well, you have a grappling hook, and later on when you fight other enemies, you pull them towards you, but because this boss character is a lot heavier, you go flying towards the boss character, which is like a weird physics mechanic you wouldn't expect in a movie tie-in game that much. Or maybe you would, I don't know. I just think that was like a cool little thing that they actually took into consideration the weight of characters, where most movie tie-in games would not give a shit. And there's something about these like PS2 graphics that I genuinely really love. Admittedly, I am playing this on an upscaler and I'm playing it on the Xbox, and the graphic powers are a tiny bit better, but yeah, it looks great still. And throughout the game, there are these sort of like traversal platformers, puzzling bits, and it just reminds me so much of Devil May Cry, like especially the first Devil May Cry. And this bit here is like copy and paste from a Devil May Cry game. Like, oh no, some sort of dark shield has appeared behind me and I have to kill a certain amount of enemies to get through to the next phase. Like, that screams Devil May Cry, really. But I think once you get into the game, once you get past the tutorial and you're on the first level and whatnot, it really begins to open up and becomes a much more fluid, fast-paced game. It's genuinely great. Like, I love all of this combat, all of the weird enemies that you have to fight that aren't necessarily in the film. Having to fight them again is really, really good. You have lots of like disposable throwaway enemies that you can absolutely just crush through. It's almost like a Warriors game, like a Dynasty Warriors game, just cleaving through enemies, and eventually get like to unlock all these different abilities like finisher moves where you just like smite people, and I'm like, I don't remember that in the film, but I appreciate this being included in the game. But that's my point. I think this game is heavily underrated, and I would be absolutely fascinated to hear anyone else's opinion on this game if they remember it. I spoke to a few of my friends, and only one of my friends ever had this game when they were younger, and I had this game when I was younger. I was playing my original copy, and I had such good memories playing this game. I used to have a weird tradition where it got to October time, Halloween time, and I'd just start playing these games. This, Resident Evil, loads of different games. So I just play it around Halloween. And the Van Helsing film is one of my absolute go-to Halloween films because it's just the right level of dumb spookiness. Like, it's got some absolutely incredible line delivery. It's so dramatic, it's so over the top, it's like watching a pantomime. It's great. The film is an absolute staple of my childhood, and I still watch it regularly now. Like, it doesn't have to be Halloween for me to watch that film, but I watch it more around Halloween with other films like Sleepy Hollow, Scream, and Friday the 13th. And I had this just overwhelming like sense of nostalgia going back to this game and just being like, yeah, it's crap, but it's so fun. And that's what I feel like a lot of games nowadays are completely missing, is like there's no like mid-tier games. Everything has to be like triple or quadruple A games, billion-dollar games. There's no just like good, decent movie tie-in games. And weirdly, this is not the only movie tie-in game to feature Hubert Jackman that is great. The Wolverine game that came out for the Wolverine Origins movie is fantastic, but the film is awful. Maybe it's a trend with Hugh Jackman games. Who knows? But let me know in the comments below if you ever played this game, and I'll start a conversation about it. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.